The silence that followed was deafening. Karen stared at the teenage girl who had just called her out in front of the entire neighborhood. For a moment, something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe even shame. But then her expression hardened into something far more dangerous than anger. "Miss Martins," Karen said quietly, "you've just demonstrated exactly why this community needs stronger leadership, why the rules need to be enforced more strictly, why families who can't teach their children proper respect." She let the threat hang in the air. Trevor Walsh suddenly found his courage. "Karen, stop. This isn't about rules anymore. This is about you being embarrassed and taking it out on everyone else." Karen turned to face him, and for the first time all evening, she smiled, a cold, calculating expression that made several people in the audience shiver. "Board Member Walsh, thank you for volunteering to help with our new community initiative." She clicked to the final slide of her presentation. "Effective immediately, Willowbrook Estates will be implementing a neighborhood watch program, 24-hour surveillance of all common areas, mandatory compliance reporting, and weekly property inspections." The room exploded into chaos. Voices rose in protest. People stood and started arguing. And somewhere in the back, old Mr. Peterson started laughing, actually laughing at the absurdity of it all. But Karen wasn't finished. As the noise reached its peak, she raised her hand for silence. When that didn't work, she banged her gavel until the head flew off and skidded across the floor. "The first inspection," she announced over the din, "will be tomorrow morning, starting with Maple Street." Her gaze found the Martinez family, all of Maple Street. As residents began filing out, muttering angrily among themselves, Karen remained at the podium, gathering her papers with methodical precision. She'd expected resistance. She planned for it. What she hadn't planned for was Sophia Martinez approaching the front of the room, her parents trailing nervously behind her. "Mrs. Whitmore," Sophia said quietly, "I'm sorry about your car, really, but this isn't the way to handle it." Karen looked down at the girl, this child who'd had the audacity to challenge her in public, and felt something shift inside her chest. For just a moment, she saw herself through Sophia's eyes, a middle-aged woman taking her frustrations out on her neighbors, using rules as weapons instead of tools for community building. But the moment passed quickly, replaced by a familiar surge of righteous indignation. "Miss Martins," Karen said, her voice steady and cold, "you'll understand soon enough. Rules exist for a reason. Order exists for a reason. And when people like your family refuse to respect that," she smiled that dangerous smile again, "well, let's just say tomorrow is going to be very educational for everyone." As the Martinez family walked away, Karen began packing up her presentation materials. Through the community center windows, she could see clusters of neighbors gathered under the parking lot lights, their voices carrying on the evening breeze. She could see Trevor Walsh talking animatedly to Bob Rodriguez. She could see Margaret Chen shaking her head in what looked like disgust. Let them plot, she thought. Let them whisper and complain and band together against her. She'd been preparing for this war longer than any of them realized. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Saw the meeting online. Very impressive. Would love to discuss business opportunities. J. Morrison, Morrison Property Management." Karen frowned. The meeting hadn't been recorded or streamed online, at least not officially. She looked around the empty community center, noting the small security camera mounted in the corner, the same type of camera that had captured her car's dramatic pool dive. Someone had been watching, someone with connections to property management companies. As Karen turned off the lights and locked up the community center, she couldn't shake the feeling that her war with the neighbors was about to become much more complicated than she'd anticipated. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, she had inspection routes to plan and violation notices to draft. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Karen Whitmore's perfectly manicured nails dug crescents into her steering wheel as she watched her brand-new Tesla Model S roll backward down the steep driveway, straight toward the community pool. The car's autopilot had malfunctioned at the worst possible moment, and all she could do was scream, "Stop!" as $200,000 of German engineering crashed through the pool fence and landed with a spectacular splash in 8 feet of chlorinated water. But that wasn't even the worst part of Karen's Tuesday morning. 20 minutes earlier, she discovered that someone had the audacity to paint their mailbox forest green instead of the HOA-approved colonial sage. The violation notice she'd been drafting in her car had fluttered away in the breeze when she'd frantically lunged for the emergency brake, and now evidence of her righteous fury was scattered across the Martinez family's lawn like confetti. "This is a disaster," Karen muttered, watching her Tesla's headlights create an eerie underwater glow. "An absolute disaster." She pulled out her phone and speed-dialed the first number on her favorites list. "Emergency HOA board meeting. My house. 1 hour." The third shocking moment came when she realized the pool's security camera had captured everything. Her meltdown, her car, her complete loss of control. And worse, it had captured her wearing the forbidden namaste-in-bed tank top that technically violated the community's appropriate attire guidelines. Within 30 minutes, Karen had transformed her dining room into a war room. Legal pads covered in angry scrawl lined the mahogany table, and she printed 17 copies of pool safety regulations, vehicle parking ordinances, and emergency protocol procedures. She was nothing if not thorough. "We have a situation," she announced as board members filed through her front door. Margaret Chen looked skeptical, Bob Rodriguez seemed barely awake, and young Trevor Walsh, the newest member who'd somehow wormed his way onto the board, despite being only 28, was openly grinning. "Is it true your car is doing the backstroke?" Trevor asked, settling into his chair with obvious amusement. Karen's eye twitched. "This is not a joke, Trevor. This is about liability, about precedent, about maintaining the standards that make Willowbrook Estates the premier community in this entire county." "Karen," Margaret said gently, "maybe we should focus on getting your car out first, then." "No." Karen slammed her hand on the table, making everyone jump. "We're going to handle this properly, by the book, starting with a full investigation into how this happened." She clicked open her laptop and pulled out the security footage. There she was, in all her rage-filled glory, gesturing wildly at the Martinez mailbox. Then the car started moving. Then the screaming. Then the splash. "I don't see how this requires an emergency board meeting," Bob mumbled. Karen's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Because Bob, the Martinez family is out there right now, laughing. Laughing at what happened to me. Mrs. Martinez actually brought out lemonade for the tow truck driver. They're treating this like entertainment." "Maybe because it kind of is," Trevor suggested. The silence that followed could have frozen lava. Karen slowly turned to face the youngest board member, her expression transforming from annoyance to something much more calculating. "You know what, Trevor? You're absolutely right. This is entertaining. So entertaining, in fact, that I think we need to make sure everyone in Willowbrook Estates gets to enjoy it properly." She pulled out her phone and began typing furiously. "Emergency community meeting. Tonight, 7 p.m. Community Center." "Karen, what are you planning?" Margaret asked nervously. Karen's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I'm planning to remind everyone exactly who runs this community and why the rules exist, all of them." Through the window, they could see her Tesla being slowly winched out of the pool, water cascading from its doors like a mechanical waterfall. But Karen wasn't watching her ruined car anymore. She was watching the Martinez house, where 3 generations of family had gathered on the front porch, pointing and whispering. Where the forbidden green mailbox stood like a monument to defiance. Where someone had just planted what looked suspiciously like non-approved petunias in the front flower bed. "Margaret, I need you to draft violation notices for every house on Maple Street. Bob, get me the architectural review files for the past 6 months. Trevor," she paused, studying the young man's increasingly worried expression. "Trevor, I have a special job for you." The afternoon sun glinted off her waterlogged Tesla as Karen began planning what would either be her greatest triumph as HOA president, or the beginning of something much more dangerous than anyone in Willowbrook Estates could imagine. By 6 p.m., Karen had transformed the community center into a courtroom. She'd arranged the folding chairs in rigid rows, placed a podium at the front, and even brought her own gavel, a souvenir from a vacation to colonial Williamsburg that she'd been saving for just such an occasion. The residents of Willowbrook Estates filed in with the nervous energy of people who knew they were about to witness something spectacular. Word had spread quickly about Karen's car taking an unscheduled swim, but nobody quite understood why that warranted an emergency meeting. They were about to find out. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen began, her voice echoing through the cramped space. "We gather tonight because our community is under attack." Mrs. Martinez shifted uncomfortably in the third row. Her husband Carlos had suggested they skip the meeting entirely, but their daughter Sophia had insisted they attend. "She can't possibly blame us for her car accident," Sophia had said. Looking at Karen's expression now, Carlos wished they'd listened to him instead. "Some of you," Karen continued, clicking to the first slide of her presentation, "seem to think that rules are suggestions, that standards are optional, that the guidelines we've all agreed to live by are somehow negotiable." The projector screen filled with a photo of the Martinez mailbox in all its forest green glory. "This," Karen said, her voice rising, "is violation number 1. Mailbox color non-compliance. Reported 17 times over the past 8 months. 17 times." Carlos stood up slowly. "Mrs. Whitmore, with respect, we've been in discussions with the architectural committee about." "Sit down." Karen's voice cracked like a whip. "You'll have your chance to speak when I call on you." Trevor Walsh raised his hand hesitantly. "Karen, maybe we should." "Board Member Walsh," she said coldly, "I believe you have something to share with everyone." Trevor's face went pale. Earlier that afternoon, Karen had given him a choice: present her findings about neighborhood violations or face a board review of his own property. She'd done her homework, and apparently Trevor's backyard shed was 6 inches too close to the property line. Trevor pulled out a folder with trembling hands. "During our investigation today, we discovered several irregularities." Karen's smile was triumphant. "Please share with everyone what you found." "The Chen family has been operating what appears to be an unlicensed vegetable garden," Trevor read, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Rodriguez household has been parking their motorcycle in a non-designated area for 3 months." Bob Rodriguez jumped to his feet. "That's my son's bike. He's been parking it behind our house, not on the street." "Behind your house," Karen repeated, in direct violation of Section 4.7 of the Vehicle Storage Regulations. No motorized vehicles may be stored in areas visible from neighboring properties without proper screening. The room began to buzz with angry murmurs. Margaret Chen looked mortified. "Karen, this is ridiculous. It's a tomato plant. It's an unauthorized agricultural operation." Karen shot back. "And according to the covenant, any resident engaged in commercial food production, it's 2 tomato plants." Margaret's husband David shouted, "We're not running a farm." Karen banged her gavel 3 times. "Order. We will have order." She clicked to the next slide. "But these violations, serious as they are, pale in comparison to what I discovered this afternoon." The screen filled with a photograph that made several people gasp. It was Sophia Martinez, age 16, walking their golden retriever without a leash. "Leash law violation," Karen announced. "Photographed at 3:47 p.m. today. The perpetrator is a minor, which means the violation falls directly on her parents." Sophia stood up, her cheeks burning red. "I was 30 feet from my front door. Goldie was just going to the bathroom." "The leash law makes no exceptions for proximity to residence or bathroom breaks," Karen replied smoothly. "Rules are rules, Miss Martinez." Carlos Martinez had heard enough. "This has gone too far, Karen. Your car accident doesn't give you the right to harass our families." Karen's eyes glittered dangerously. "My car accident, Mr. Martinez, was the direct result of your family's continued defiance of community standards. If your mailbox had been the proper color, if your property had been in compliance, if you had shown even the slightest respect for the rules we all agreed to follow, I wouldn't have been distracted enough to." "To what?" Sophia Martinez stood up, her young voice cutting through Karen's practiced rhetoric. "To lose control of your car? To blame everyone else for your mistakes?" to turn this community into some kind of police state.